Imagine waking up in a world without clocks, without cities, without cereal in your cupboard or a phone in your hand. No alarms, no grocery stores, no traffic. Just you, your tribe, and the wilderness. For over 95% of our existence, that was our reality. We were hunters, foragers, nomads wandering ancient landscapes, following herds and seasons, surviving by skill, instinct, and cooperation. But then, something changed. Somewhere, around 12,000 years ago, in a fertile crescent of land stretching across the Middle East, someone planted a seed, and for the first time, they waited for it to grow. It was a small decision, a quiet act, but it would ripple outward to reshape the destiny of our species. That simple seed would give rise to fields, and those fields would give rise to villages, then cities, then empires. Without agriculture, there would be no pyramids, no written language, no taxes, no borders, no armies, no iPhones. Everything we call civilization, every system we take for granted, can be traced back to this moment. But was it really progress? Or was it a trap disguised as triumph? Because when we settled down, we gained control over food, but lost the freedom of movement. We built homes, but opened the door to war, disease, and inequality. This is the story of the agricultural revolution, a turning point so profound, some historians call it the biggest gamble in human history. In this journey, we'll uncover what life was like before farming, how agriculture first emerged and spread, how it changed not just what we ate, but how we lived, loved, fought, and ruled. We'll explore the marvels it built and the burdens it brought, because understanding how we tamed the land might just help us understand how the land tamed us. What life looks before agriculture, before the plow, before the pasture, before we even thought to plant a seed, there was the hunt. Our ancestors lived in rhythm with the land. They followed the stars, the herds, the rains. Their lives were shaped not by what they built, but by what the earth offered. This was the world of the hunter-gatherers, a lifestyle that lasted for over 200,000 years. You'd move lightly, never carrying more than you needed. You'd eat what you could find, fruits, nuts, roots, and game. Every day was survival, but also freedom. No mortgages, no bosses, no spreadsheets, just the land, the tribe, and time. These people weren't primitive. They crafted tools from stone and bone. They painted the walls of caves with stories that echo through time. They learned to work together, to share, to navigate complex social bonds. And contrary to popular belief, they weren't constantly starving. Many anthropologists argue that hunter-gatherers often enjoyed better diets and more leisure time than early farmers. In fact, some tribes only worked 4 to 6 hours a day, spending the rest of their time resting, storytelling, or playing. But their lives weren't easy. One bad winter, one injury, one predator in the wrong place at the wrong time, and everything could change. And the world around them was changing. About 12,000 years ago, Earth entered a new phase. The Ice Age was ending, and with it came warmer temperatures, more stable climates, and a boom in plant and animal life. Some regions, like the Fertile Crescent, became lush, abundant landscapes where wild grains grew in tall golden waves. People began to notice. These plants could be harvested, stored, even spread. And that's when it started. Not with a grand plan, but with small steps. A seed scattered here, a field cleared there. Perhaps it was necessity, a failed hunt. Perhaps it was curiosity. No one set out to invent farming, but over generations, humans began to shape the land. We began to stay, to settle, and in doing so, we took the first steps into the modern world. Discovery and spread of agriculture, where it all began. It began not with a bang, but with a sprout. In a region known as the Fertile Crescent, stretching from modern-day Iraq through Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and into parts of Turkey, humans made one of the most important discoveries in history. Here, along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, Wild grains like emmer and einkorn wheat grew in abundance. So did barley, lentils, chickpeas, and flax. People began to harvest them, not just once, but season after season. They learned which seeds grew best. They began to store food for winter and for lean times. Over generations, this simple act of planting and waiting evolved into a new way of life. It's easy to forget it was a slow experimental process, guided by observation, luck, and necessity. The first farmers weren't kings or scholars. They were ordinary families, watching the land, noticing patterns and acting on instinct. They were the first to domesticate nature. Wheat and barley weren't alone. Humans also began to tame animals, sheep, goats, and eventually cattle and pigs. And from these early sparks, a fire spread. What's remarkable is this. Agriculture didn't just appear in one place. It arose independently in at least 7 different regions around the world. 9,000 years ago in China, people tamed wild rice and millet. In sub-Saharan Africa, sorghum, yams, African rice, born from scratch. New Guinea, bananas and sugarcane in jungle highlands. Mesoamerica turned a wild grass into corn. Not just food, a revolution. In the Andes, they gave us potatoes, quinoa, and cassava, farming at altitude. Who knew? Different places, different crops. One big idea: don't chase food, grow it. Each of these moments, a Neolithic revolution. Each one, a giant leap for humanity. Each of these regions had their own Neolithic revolution, their own moment of transformation. And with each breakthrough, humanity unlocked a powerful new ability: to produce more food than they needed. Food surpluses meant not everyone had to farm. People could specialize. Some became toolmakers, builders, leaders, priests. Villages grew into towns. Towns grew into cities. One of the earliest known farming settlements is Jericho, in modern-day Palestine. Dating back to around 9000 BCE, Jericho had stone walls, permanent buildings, and even a defensive tower. How agriculture has changes human society. Sedentism, population growth, social hierarchies. When humans began to farm, they stopped moving. And for the first time in history, we put down roots, literally and figuratively. This shift from wandering to settling is called sedentism. It may seem ordinary now, but back then, it was revolutionary. Imagine the difference. Instead of chasing food, food was grown at your doorstep. Instead of temporary shelters, homes were built to last. Walls, roofs, hearths. Instead of living in small bands of 30 or 40 people, entire villages began to rise. Sedentary life allowed for things that had never been possible before. Tools became more complex. Pottery was invented. Granaries were built. Objects could be stored, repaired, handed down. Time itself began to change. Seasons mattered now. Planting and harvesting demanded planning, calendars, rituals. Children were born into homes that wouldn't move. The idea of property, of land ownership, took shape. With more food came another change: more people. Farming societies could feed larger populations, and women, no longer moving constantly, could have more children. The population boom was slow at first, but steady. Where hunter-gatherers might space children 4 to 5 years apart, farming families had them much closer together. It was a numbers game. In the long run, farming societies outbred and outlasted their nomadic neighbors. But more people meant more problems to solve. How do you divide land? Who protects it? Who leads? Who follows? With permanent settlements came social structures. Not everyone had equal access to land or resources. Those with more food or stronger tools began to accumulate wealth, a concept that barely existed in the mobile, egalitarian world of hunter-gatherers. Leadership emerged, first as necessity, then as hierarchy. Some became chiefs, organizers, or religious figures, believed to have special connections to the divine. Religion began to evolve, too. With the mystery of the harvest came new rituals. Offerings were made to gods of rain, sun, and fertility. Over time, entire mythologies would grow from the soil. A once equal society was now layered. Farmers at the bottom, laboring to feed everyone. Artisans in the middle, crafting tools, clothes, and goods, and leaders or priests at the top who claimed to control the rain, the seasons, or even the afterlife. We call this process stratification, the creation of social classes. Inequality wasn't born with farming, but it took on new and lasting forms. With more people in one place, conflict also became more common. Villages needed to defend their land, their water, their grain. Warfare, previously rare and small-scale, began to evolve. Walls were built, weapons were sharpened, armies were trained, and thus with the field came the fortress. But it wasn't all conflict. Farming also allowed for cooperation at a new scale. Farmers traded surpluses, builders raised homes for neighbors, storytellers preserved culture, laws were created, and soon languages were written down to manage it all. In just a few thousand years, a blink in evolutionary time, humans transformed from roaming bands into urbanized societies. The first cities, kingdoms, and eventually empires were made possible by this single choice: to grow our own food. The agricultural revolution didn't just feed us, it reshaped our relationships, our power structures, and the very way we see the world. The birth of civilization. With their feet planted firmly in the soil, early humans began to innovate, not just to survive, but to thrive. It transformed how we lived. Farming demanded a whole new toolkit. Clearing fields, turning over earth, planting seeds, all required purpose-built tools. Simple digging sticks were soon replaced with sharpened stone hoes. Flint blades were mounted onto wooden handles, becoming early sickles for cutting grain. Eventually, people learned to polish stone, creating smoother, stronger tools. These weren't just functional, they were crafted with skill, often beautifully shaped. One of the most important inventions during this time? Pottery. With food surpluses came the need for storage. Clay pots, jars, and bowls were made to hold grains, milk, water, and even fermented brews. Pottery also allowed for cooking in new ways: stewing, boiling, and preserving. But these containers were more than practical. They became canvases. Early people painted animals, symbols, and sacred motifs onto them. Art was no longer just on cave walls. It entered the home. While plants were being tamed, so were animals. The first creature to walk beside us was likely the dog, domesticated even before farming, during the Ice Age. Once agriculture took root, other animals followed. Goats, sheep, pigs, and cattle were selectively bred for traits like tameness, size, milk production, or wool. Instead of chasing wild herds, humans created their own. Barns were built, fences rose. A new relationship between humans and animals had begun, one of mutual dependency. Houses were made from mud brick, timber, and stone. Roofs were layered with reeds or thatch. In Banpo, an early Chinese farming village, circular homes surrounded a large communal space, proof that people weren't just surviving, they were planning. In the Indus Valley, settlements like Mergar included granaries, tools made from copper, and even evidence of early dentistry. These places weren't just clusters of huts, they were the blueprints of civilization. With security came creativity. Artists carved figurines from bone and clay. Weavers spun threads into textiles. Painters adorned walls with scenes of daily life, animals, and mythic symbols. One of humanity's greatest tools began to emerge: writing. Not full alphabets, not yet, but small clay tokens used to track goods. Over time, these evolved into pictographs and eventually into full writing systems like cuneiform in Sumer and hieroglyphics in Egypt. Why did writing begin? To record harvests, to track trade, to tax grain, and count sheep. Writing was born from wheat. Around 3500 BCE, the wheel was invented, possibly for pottery first, then for carts. The plow was developed, first drawn by humans, then by oxen. Irrigation systems diverted water from rivers to fields, allowing farming in dry areas. These were massive leaps forward. They increased yields, expanded farming zones, and laid the groundwork for cities and empires. Thanks for watching The Human Journey. If you found this story fascinating, subscribe for more deep dives into the forces that shaped our world.